So the next general election is scheduled for some time in 2024, a date acknowledged today by Liz Truss in her acceptance speech. But notwithstanding that, Sir Keir Starmer has put the Labour Party on an election footing should the new Prime Minister decide to go to the polls earlier. So what is the likelihood of that happening, and how will Liz Truss govern? I'm joined now by Alex Thomas, Programme Director at the Institute for Government. Good to talk to you, Mr. Thomas. Well, let's deal with the prospects of perhaps an early election. If the package, the support package that Liz Truss is going to unveil sometime this week, if that lands well, might there be a temptation to go to the country sooner than 2024?
I think it then depends what happens in the polls, and that will determine whether the pressure will rise or not for Liz Truss to call an election. But I think the striking thing about today is that any snap election is less likely now than it was yesterday. It struck me that the reason Liz Truss was so keen to mention 2024 in what otherwise was a pretty content-free immediate victory speech was to try and preempt that kind of groundswell of opinion and to scotch any talk of an early election. It seemed to me she wanted to set that as the expectation right from the off and avoid what Theresa May and particularly Gordon Brown fell into, which was this sort of impossible dilemma about whether to go to the country or not.
So if that is the case then, and it's 2 years with this cost of living crisis, which goes on how long we do not know, potentially she's got to find a huge amount of money to offer people support.
Yes, and Thursday is going to be a really big day. One of the interesting things about the beginning of this government is we'll have that, the classic new Prime Minister on the steps of Downing Street moment. We'll then have the formation of the cabinet. All of those are really important political signals as to how the government's going to go. But actually, very, very quickly, if it is Thursday that we expect news on this energy support announcement, that will be the big moment. So it's almost a bigger moment than Liz Truss actually taking office. It's an unusual situation, but then we're in unusual times.
Indeed, and it's all about delivery. That's number one on the list. We heard Liz Truss saying that again today. Talk to me about the difference in how they're going to organise their top teams, because behind me here, I don't know how many times we've been talking about Boris Johnson reorganising those around him and changing the way Downing Street is run. What difference are we going to notice in a Truss administration?
Well, there's always a difference because Number 10 and the centre of government in particular reflects the personality of the Prime Minister. So a chaotic Number 10 perhaps reflected the Prime Minister of Boris Johnson. I suspect we will see a difference in Downing Street. Liz Truss will be keen to signal that this is a new regime, however closely she's tried to associate herself with Boris Johnson thus far. There have been some briefings that we can expect to slim down Number 10. I'm not sure that's a particularly good idea if it means abandoning things like a delivery unit, like expertise on Parliament and legislation. Liz Truss will need those, but what she does need is a really clear sense of command and control. One civil servant in charge of Number 10, one special advisor running the political team, and that's one of the things that I think was lacking in Boris Johnson's administration.
And so therefore, what you're saying is in terms of that delivery, she needs a very tight, trusted team who then go to the senior civil servants, to the departments, and make them do what she wants.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that team don't have any agenda separate from the Prime Minister. Liz Truss will need to trust her top lieutenants to be able to reflect her views, not to be running their own agendas, but to be projecting out across the rest of government in order to get things done. And if she wants to focus on delivery, like she said today, she's going to need to take the trick of working effectively with the civil service as well. We've seen rough times for the civil service. I mean, they're fairly used to being bashed around a little bit in the press. You know, that goes with the territory. But Truss will need to find a way to get the most out of the civil service. So it'll be interesting. Certainly one of the things that the Institute for Government will be watching for is the messages she sends out to how she wants to run the machine of government.
And we always hear this, don't we, that it's going to be a more cabinet-based government. That therefore requires a very talented top team around her. Now, she's got some problems here, the political problems. She has to reward those that supported her, yet try to heal the party at the same time. Do you expect some unexpected names to be sitting around that cabinet table this time tomorrow or Wednesday?
Well, we'll see. I think there will be quite a big change, but one of the interesting things, again, about this handover of power is just how much, supposedly, we already know about the new cabinet. It's been briefed out time after time over the last few days, which is a change to normal. Quite often, Prime Ministers want to keep these things quite close to their chests. So I think one of the early tests for the Truss administration, as well as the energy crisis, the cost of living, and so on, is how close the cabinet that we actually get on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning reflects some of this pre-briefing and what that tells us about some of the battles that have gone on behind the scenes. Has she been able to appoint a Northern Ireland secretary? It seems that a few people have been reluctant to take that job. Has she appointed the business secretary, the chancellor that she wants? And I think that will tell us a lot about the early political health of this government.
Well, a frenetic few days and potentially weeks ahead. Alex Thomas, good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time.